The abuse of presidential power exists even today. US presidents aren't only the heads of the state, they are the supervisors of the entire federal bureaucracy. Ronald Reagan was an esteemed president, some may say, during his time in office.
Every man is a Berliner, forced to look upon a star.
However, his administration was often caught in notorious scandals, which left a dent in his political career. The Iran-Contra affair was unquestionably one of the most famous scandals that plagued the Reagan administration and involved Ronald Reagan directly. What exactly was the Iran-Contra affair? It was a United States political scandal in which the National Security Council was partaking in secret weapon transactions and other activities that were strictly prohibited by the US Congress and violated the stated public policy of government. It took place from August 20th, 1985 to March 4th, 1987. Let's go into more depth into who exactly was involved in this scandal. First off, we have the Reagan administration. Senior Reagan administration officials were secretly facilitating the sale of arms to Iran. The Reagan administration decided to trade these arms for hostages in hopes of successfully retrieving American hostages from Iran. At the time, Iran was under the power of Ayatollah Khomeini. To understand the context of this scandal, we would first have to find out what was happening in Iran. Why did they even need weapons? In 1985, while Iran and Iraq were at war, Iran made a secret request to purchase weapons from the United States. The primary motive for this war began when Iraq wanted to cripple Iran and prevent Ayatollah Khomeini from exporting the 1979 Iranian Revolution movement to the Shia-majority Iraq. Both Ayatollah Khomeini, the leader of Iran, and the current president of the United States, Ronald Reagan, had to negotiate in order to agree to trade weapons. Both leaders did this for the betterment of their country, which is why the scandal is deemed successful sometimes. Additionally, the administration was seeking to use the proceeds of the arms sales to fund the Contras in Nicaragua. Now, who are the Contras? The Contras are a group of anti-Sandinista rebels. They were revolting against the socialist government of Nicaragua. Reagan had promised to assist anti-communist insurgencies around the world. I quote, Reagan had called the Contras the moral equivalent of our founding fathers, but much of the funding for them came from the cocaine trade. In reaction to this, Congress passed the Boland Amendment in 1982, which prevented the federal government from providing military support and money to the rebels. Unfortunately, this did not stop the president. He told his national security advisor, Robert McFarlane, to help the Contras, regardless of the cost. McFarlane had found an amazing opportunity in Iran, it seemed. In 1985, an Iranian-backed terrorist group held 7 American hostages in Lebanon. This Islamist militant group, known as Hezbollah, had actually kidnapped 104 foreign hostages starting in 1982, and most of them were Americans. Reagan exclaimed that his advisors must find a way to bring the hostages back home. And with this permission, McFarlane decided to make a deal that the United States would give Iran weapons in exchange for the release of the hostages.
A significant step which Iran could take, we indicated, would be to use its influence in Lebanon to secure the release of all hostages held there. Because I believe it is high time that the civilized countries of the world made it plain that there is no room worldwide for terrorism. There will be no negotiation with terrorists of any kind.
Even though Reagan publicly insisted he would not negotiate with terrorists, he still made sure that this happened. However, this deal wasn't over yet, and it did not secretly secure the release of the hostages in exchange for only weapons. There was a lot of money involved as well. How much, you may wonder? $30 million were allocated for the weapons. The CIA used a portion of this money to fund the Contras in Nicaragua that were in their guerrilla fight against the Sandinista government. And this is when we get the real question of if the United States should have armed the Contras. And I feel that ultimately the United States should not have armed the Contras because they were illegally sending weapons to a known enemy in exchange for hostages, which led to further tension with Iran and people to lose trust in Ronald Reagan. An investigation that was prompted by the United States Attorney General discovered that only $12 million of the $30 million was actually used for the weapons. The rest of all that money went straight to the Contras. Reagan denied any allegations that had to do with him negotiating with terrorists or having anything to do with this affair at all. However, soon forth, Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North came forward, and he claimed that he had diverted the funds to the Contras and that Reagan knew about every single transaction. Oliver North's boss, the National Security Advisor, as we have already mentioned, Robert McFarlane, had resigned just before the news broke of the scandal, and he had also attempted suicide before his scheduled testimony. In essence to this, Ronald Reagan claimed that he was innocent and had no clue of what his subordinates were doing at the time of the scandal. However, only 15 years before was the Watergate scandal involving President Richard Nixon. Several Americans refused to believe Ronald Reagan. Why isn't this surprising? First of all, Ronald Reagan committed acts which were deemed illegal by Congress. Second, the CIA was involved of acts of sabotage in Nicaragua. If the president was committing illegal acts, won't that only encourage the people of the nation to do the exact same? Also, tensions worsened with Iran because they were not satisfied with the arms. They kept demanding for more, and when the US put a hold on this, they were not happy. In the end, the Contras were not really successful either. They barely gained any control in Nicaragua. So, why put all this effort when it will all go to waste? Nonetheless, Ronald Reagan was one of the most influential presidents that we have had in US history.